Hello everyone, and welcome to another Gear Talk, the first video of the year covering the comic series in like an actual video, not just an update or anything. This is the actual video covering the first issue of the Hive Busters comics, or the comic series in general. We'll be covering every single thing. We're going to cover all the issues from the original 3 Gears of War comic volumes. We're going to cover Rise of Rom. We already have covered the Hive Busters one, but I'll have some discussion videos tacked in here and there talking about the Hive Busters to give them their due respect for the comics. And we're just going to touch on everything. So we're going to go through and do all the issues, starting off with this one, number 1, which is Hollows Part 1. Little disclaimer for us starting everything here. So, when we originally did the Hive Buster discussion series, and I went through and rewatched, that was very tacked on as just kind of like to throw in with the Hive Buster discussion series because of the fact that I didn't really plan on doing the comics that heavily in the past. Like right now, we're going to do them very heavily. There's going to be a lot of editing, and there's going to be pictures up here. You're going to see what's going on, all the fun stuff, you know. Ooh, there's going to be stuff everywhere. You know, I'm going to have all of that. When I originally did things, it was a whole, my impressions, just a first time through talk about it, of just, here we go. I'm just going to give you my impressions and talk about a breakdown of what the story was and what I thought of it. We're going a little heavier than that because I actually have read all of this multiple times for the comics. In fact, even for this video right now, you can't see it, but I have one monitor set up for just the comic itself so that I can keep myself going with it. So I'll be looking here. I have a real-time one in front of me right here on my phone so I can keep track of like where like specific parts of the comic I can talk about without going in depth. And then over here I have all the audio recording, so I have everything running at once. So during the video, just to cover everything correctly, I'll be looking over here, I'll be looking down here. I'm probably not going to look over here because I have my audio running perfectly fine unless something were to happen. But yeah, I'm going to be looking over a few times just to cover what's in front of me when it comes to the actual pages of the comic. I want to cover the whole thing, roughly the same length as the Hive Buster one was, just we're going to go over the story and talk about it. One other thing we're going to mention for Hollows is that this was the very first comic that was ever done. This was done after the original Gears of War game. Now, story-wise, this takes place about a month and a half after the first book, Aspho Fields, but 2 months after the game. So Aspho Fields, it goes this comic for the Hollows, and then it goes into Gears of War 2. Having said that, there are some continuity issues that arise in this story for all of Hollows. We're going to touch on those as we go. Mainly it covers Jace. I have talked very heavily about the continuity issues when we talked the canon stuff in Gears. I've talked the Barrick video about when they meet him and Jace. I've talked about it in Jace's video. So we'll touch on it as we get to it. This is just a disclaimer that we're going to put things together best we can, even if that means we're stapling it in to make sure it sticks. So let's start with the first page of Hollows Part 1. For the first page of Hollows, we actually have it where we don't know it at this moment, but this is actually a flashback, or at least an envisioning of the flashback mixed with kind of like some imaging of what the locusts are like. So for this, you have a basically like a little story that's being told of just like a past reflection. We learn it's from Jace, talking about basically like when we were kids, we'd hear stories about the boogeyman. And then he goes in and talks about it throughout the next couple pages of just like, you know, that they'd come from the ground and they'd snatch up kids. You know, we were always taught, you know, like the boogeyman is scary, but these were always just stories. And then it jumps into the true actual first page of Hollow, where it's Hollow Part 1 and gives recognition to the writers and artists, which I can mention that right now. Actually, since I have it on my phone right now for the real-time stuff, like I said, I'm going to be looking back and forth. I've got everything prepared for this. The writer was Joshua Ortega. He does a lot of writing for the comics. And then we also have the artist being Liam Sharp. We also have others for like the colorist, assistant editors, variant cover. We have all of that. It's not that I don't want to give my respects to everybody. It's just that if I keep doing that for all the videos, we're going to take up a chunk of time just giving props to everyone. So for right now, thank you to everyone who made the comic possible for Hollows, whether you were the editor, the variant artist, whatever you are, thank you so much. I'm just going to be doing like the main title ones for right now just to keep the ship going. Not that the editors and everyone do not matter. They matter a lot. It's just that we're just going to put out the 2 names, keep it going. That's how we're going to do it. I want to give a shout out to everyone who made the comics possible. I'll do that in all of them just to say, hey, thank you to everybody. I'll try and remember. If not, I'll do it for all the series at least we come across. But we open up the first page, and that is actually Jace taking cover while he is being bombarded by bullets. And we see, he says, if only that were true. Because of the fact that, you know, in the flashback, we see one of the characters is him as a child, and yes, the boogeymen are very much real. We start off on the next page where it actually has Jace in cover, and he's actually trying to load his Lancer. We do get the information that states this is 2 months after the Timgad bombing with the Lightmass, so we learn some time has passed. Again, now after the game, it doesn't just go into this comic. There is Aspho Fields that takes place. Great read, I recommend it. Someday maybe we'll do a book like discussion series and we'll talk about the books. I'd really love to. Aspho Fields is actually a very good book. That's where you first meet Bernie, so put that in the back of your head for someday. I might get to that. So we actually see that he's there trying to load his Lancer. He's having a tough time of it. He cannot. So he chucks it to the side and he actually pulls out his snub pistol. He is actually able to take out a Locust and he is able to defend himself. He is being encroached upon. So basically while they're coming around cover, he's firing on them and taking them out so that he's able to keep fighting. He's basically decoying them into coming around so they're open so he can fire off. That's what he chooses to do. So he does take out a couple of them. I believe by the look of it, no, he only takes out one, I believe. He only takes out one. And then the second page after that, he takes out another. So he does take out 2 in total. But while he's doing that, he actually sees the shadow of this huge, monstrous man come above with a Lancer chainsaw. And to him, he thinks he's about to get killed by a Locust. When you see, it's actually Marcus Phoenix that has jumped in, and he's defending Jace with his Lancer versus another Locust that has picked up another Lancer. And he's defending Jace and fighting off the Locust. Now, I said continuity is something we have to keep in mind for the Hollows, for this series in general. I bring that up because this is brought up on the same page we're on before we go to the next one. It brings up Jace talking about his background a little bit. Now, it's important to say too, for the Hollows, our main character is mainly Jace. Now, he's the one who narrates a lot of what's going on. Each comic kind of has its own narrator of like one of the characters that talk about what's going on, but you have to focus on like each series has like their own main character we're looking at. So Hollows is basically Jace. For instance, when we get to Baron, Alex Brand is the one we focus on quite a bit more than everyone else, but Jace is still there and very prevalent. But for the Hollows, this is mainly Jace's story. So he mentions that during this event, now remember, this is around a month and a half after the events of Aspho Fields, or about 2 months after the first game. He says he's only been in a few skirmishes so far before he was on this mission. It's important to state that those skirmishes, it's weird because 9 AE was when we first meet him in Shadow of Rom. So we meet him there when he's a child. So he probably takes a couple of years to grow up, and then he joins the COG. When he joins the COG, he is actually with Dom and Ty when they're trying to figure out how to get Marcus out of prison, and it's assumed he's a pretty skilled soldier at that point. It's kind of painted, but he's with them. Before that even, he had Operation Midnight, which is his first ever mission. So you had Shadow of Rom, Operation Midnight, then you had the books, which was the slab that covers that situation that happened while Marcus was in prison, and then you jump over and it would be this story would happen next for his for everything. So with everything he did with Marcus and along with Operation Midnight, it's weird because he says only a few skirmishes I've been in, but he's been in quite a bit of action. So I want to assume either he's humble to himself about that, like I've only done this a few times, or legitimately he has not seen action that often except for those few times. I talked a lot about that in Jace's video when we covered like the continuity, but as far as I can tell, he's telling the truth here. Again, this came out before everything else, so I'm assuming they just didn't understand Jace's character by the time it got from this all the way to like Shadow of Rom when we have a whole history of him. But it does cover like, okay, it kind of makes sense because maybe a lot of the missions he was on, he just didn't have a lot of action. Because we learn after Gears of War 2, he gets promoted and he's leading a squad of his own. So maybe he was in some action, just there were a lot of missions where he did not see action itself except for those few times we follow him. So that's my tangent there on Jace's continuity. We'll have a few more coming up, but for right now, that's what we're looking at. So we go to the next page, and here we have it where Marcus is currently in the battle, currently in a chainsaw bayonet duel with the Locust that was currently coming around, like this, the third one that was coming around for Jace. Because there were, one of them he took out, the other one he took over from cover, and the other one Marcus came in to save him from. So him and Marcus are going at it. And then Marcus, I love how he does it because they don't really show the full action because it's a comic. But basically, while they're holding off and dueling, Marcus kind of like kicks it up on the Locust where the Locust goes up. So he does that to the Locust and kind of like brings the butt end of his Lancer right under the chin. And so he makes the motion of like kicking everything up to get under the chin. And then he comes back down on it and starts slicing the Locust right in half. So it was funny because the motion was just up and down basically, and only Marcus Phoenix. And all of this time, while this is going on, Jace is a big fanboy of Marcus. Like, he's a very big fanboy. Like, very much. Like, you even see, and they mention this later on, his armor is the same styled armor he picked up to look a bit more like Marcus's. Like, he is a fan. He is your, like, I'm your number one fan, Marcus. That's why I joined. That's Jace, basically. Now, obviously, him and Zeta have a history, but everyone sees Marcus as, like, the soldier among soldiers. Also because he was trying to get him out of prison. It's like, this is Marcus Phoenix. Jeez. This man came out of prison. It's crazy. He's amazing. So he's gushing the entire time, like, only the Marcus Phoenix can be Reckonhouse like this. And then you get to the next page where everything just finished happening, and you see that, you know, Marcus has dealt with the Locust, everything's handled, and he looks over at Jace and basically says, like, how are you doing? You doing okay? And then the Locust that got sliced in half, he's still alive, and you see he's lost a lot. Like, this is gone. He's basically dead to rights. So Jace, while he's getting up, he busts out his snub, and he takes fire at the Locust right in the head and kills it. And he's basically like, his words, how am I doing? Done. He's like, I'm getting the kill. You got the assist, I get the kill. So I kind of like it. Like, Jace is still, like, at this point in the story with how it's worded from him, he's seen some action, but he's still somewhat of a rookie. So it's just like, I fired enough guns to know how to do this. I got it. After this happens, fire starts coming out again. The enemy, the Locusts, are firing upon them again. And basically Marcus starts berating Jace at this point of like, don't get cocky, get back into cover. Why the hell did you throw away your rifle? And you do learn that it was actually the rifle. I had it wrong. I had to double check the page. But you do learn it was Jace's rifle that third Locust picked up and was going to come down on. That, you know, Marcus saved him from his own weapon. Congratulations, Marcus. You saved him from a rookie mistake. So he's berating him of like, why did you do that? And he says, I couldn't get it to load. I was having problems with it. And he says, last I checked, the snub pistol you're using is a one-handed weapon. That means keep your Lancer on you if you've got your second hand available. Do not just throw it out. And of course, after getting berated by Marcus, you have Jace going, Wilco, Sarge, you got it. So they continue to fight, and they're battling through and taking care of the rest of the Locusts. Some time jumps ahead after they finally take care of everything, and they say, let's go find the rest of Delta. So they continue on to where the last second half of Delta was seen, so Delta B or Delta 2. They go and take a look, and you learn that they've been in the Badlands. They're in the Pura Badlands, it's called. They've been in the Badlands for about a week. Their mission they were sent out to do was to find any other COG soldiers or gears that are out there that are currently missing or need to be brought back into Jacinto. Because remember, after the Lightmass Bomb went off, you know, that was a big explosion. That affected a lot of things. It was bigger than just the hollow. Like, it exploded. It was a big boom. It affected the top side too, to the point where, like I said, after Aspho Fields, this is probably a couple weeks into the future. So it's been roughly 2 or 3 weeks where they haven't seen some of the missing squads. So there's squads out there that are just gone, and they don't know what's going on. So Delta was sent out there to go and find what happened to those squads, or at least figure out if they're killed, MIA, what's going on. So they're sent out there to find them, and they separated 2 teams, and that's where we have Delta 1 and 2. We have Jace and Marcus, and they are currently looking for Dom, and you also learn he has another person with him, that person by the name of Gil Gonzalez, which, for anyone who knows, when we did the Jace video, Gil is like the Dom to Jace. They're basically like a buddy team that, like, they've been stationed and deployed with each other for quite a while, and they're both sent over to Delta to fight with Marcus and Dom. So they go looking for them, and they can't see anything, and they're just trying to figure out where Delta is, until you see a Locust get chucked out the window, just a dead Locust, and they're like, okay, I think we found where Delta is. And you see Dom and Gil, and they're both like, guess what we found? We found another gear. And they only found one person, but that person, they drew, like, I've been playing some gacha games as of late. I'm not a big gacha player, but I've been getting into it with, like, Zenless, and I'm playing, like, Wizardry, it's called, where, you know, you have a slim chance of getting a really rare hero. They did the spin the wheel, and guess what? They got an ultra rare, because out comes Barrick. Michael Barrick is now here. He is the gear that is still alive that they found, and they're bringing back to Jacinto. They talked to Barrick and learned that he was a part of Echo 6. That was the squad he was a part of before everything happened with the Lightmass, and they were basically separated from the rest of the COG, and they were trying to make their way back to Jacinto. You learn that he is the only survivor. Everyone else was KIA. Marcus says, are you sure there is no one else? And of course, Barrick's like, sure as shat. Basically, he says, we'll say shat. That sounds like a good one. So he says, like, I'm the only one. And Marcus is like, sad. Okay, you were the last squad we went meant to go out and find. So Dom, go around, see if there's any ammo, any cog tanks that need to be picked up before we start making our way back to Jacinto and we get in the APC and get going. So this is the next part of continuity we need to talk about, because I have talked about this scene many times. This is where Jace comes in contact with Barrick and they speak with each other. Now, how it's shown, since this is, release-wise, this was the first time they ever met, it's kind of shown like they don't know each other and they're being introduced for the first time. So chronologically, by story, this is not the first time they've ever met each other. In fact, they have a very heavy bond with one another where, to this day, Jace still carries around the lighter of Barrick. So they are very well acquainted with one another. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm just going to put up what I put up for Barrick and Jace's video, which is kind of a breakdown on how to make this work. So you're going to see it on screen right now. It's basically just me showing, like, okay, the conversation they are having. You can kind of have it where the conversation is them talking to one another, because between Shadow of Rom and up until this comic, it's roughly been about maybe 4 to 6 years within that span. So there's a good chance they've already met each other multiple times. They've talked to each other. It's not like a big whole reunion. It could easily be just like, oh, it's Barrick. So they're just talking back and forth. And this is how I basically break it down. That's the best I can do, because this story is canon, and the events of Shadow of Rom are canon. So you have to take these the best you can to make them work. So this is what I'm going with. This is how we're kind of gonna feng shui it. So after they're done talking, they all load into the APC, and they head on out, and they're making their way through the Badlands, which you see is basically like, I don't know if it was already known as the Badlands or if that's how they're going with it, but basically the entire area is wrecked, destroyed, dilapidated buildings. So they're driving through, and basically you just see it's just a dead zone. You see a locust head on a spike. It's just death and destruction. As they make their way out of the Badlands, they actually do stop at one moment, and they decide they are going to set up camp. They're going to set up an area where they can actually get some rest, scout everything out, make sure they are safe, because this is still locust territory. Like, the majority of Sarah is basically locust territory, so they're trying to find somewhere at least within the range of where they are, where they can at least hunker down, because you learn they are a few days still out of Jacinto. Like, they still have a lot of traveling they have to do, so they're trying to get some rest so they can continue the journey. Marcus gets a hold of control, and he does say, like, hey, we found a lot of ammo, a lot of resources, but we only found one gear. Like, we were supposed to go find the gears. We only found one. They say it's a shame, unfortunately. They say, yeah, a lot of tags, but that's the best we could do. So we're going to be setting up camp, and we're going to be coming as soon as we can. And Control just says, roger that, you're all good. So he basically says, Marcus, to everyone, like, okay, everyone scout out an area of the surrounding area where we are right now so we can figure out if we're safe or if we have to keep traveling for right now. So he tells everyone to split up. He's basically like, me and Dom, we're going to go and take a look over here. And then Gil, you and Jace, you're going to go over on this end and you're going to make sure everything's good. So they all head out, and Marcus says, and don't be a hero. We continue to look around the area, but we follow Gil and Jace for this, where continuity once again. Sorry to keep bringing it up like a red flag. Gil asks Jace, what do you make of Marcus Phoenix? Jace responds with, what do you mean? So we never get an answer of anything crazy or anything from Jace. So my opinion on this is that between Midnight and between the situations with the Hollow, or Hollow, which we're in right now, Gil was not with Jace when they were with Marcus, Dom, and Ty. So my guess is that maybe Jace is just like, well, what do you mean? Like, I know Marcus well. I've already teamed up with him. I've been with him before on missions. I know Marcus. But he doesn't get a chance to say that. Instead, Gil's just like, like the war hero, the prison break, the bomb, all of this stuff, Marcus Phoenix. And Jace goes on to say, you sound disappointed. So I'm going to take that, since everything's canon, we got to connect it somehow, is that Jace is basically like, well, yeah, I know Marcus. And he's like, well, what about all this? It's like, are you disappointed by what you hear about him? So that's kind of how you have to take it. Jace is well aware of Marcus. He's just like, yeah, he's Marcus Phoenix. Like, I followed him. I love the guy. He's my hero, but I fought with Marcus. It's not like this is a new thing to me. So they continue looking around. They start hearing something, and they're trying to find what it is to see it is just a rat, and they have a breath of fresh air for a moment, because a rat is the least of your worries when you're fighting locusts. The next page cuts to when they're all back at like the campground that they have right now for where they're basically going to station themselves before morning, and they all have a campfire going, and they're all sitting around the fire. It's actually a really great scene where you have everyone, you have Marcus, Dom, Jace, Gil, and Barrick all sitting around the fire, and it's Dom retelling some of the portions of the original Gears of War. war. So he's talking about the mining area where they were going down the carts and Anya was moving him around. And he's like, yeah, you know, it was crazy, you know, all of this just to get to underground. And him and Marcus are having like a very nice back and forth where Marcus still has his tough guy persona, but it's a lot more lax than it normally is, where he's just like, yeah, me and Marcus were freaking out. And Marcus is like, yeah, you were freaking out, not me. And it's really nice to see because you don't get that many moments of like just, you know, what a daily life for the Gears are when it comes to the games or the comics. You don't get that a lot where it's just them sitting down relaxing and telling stories. I imagine they all tell stories from the war. Like imagine Jace and Gil are sitting here like, yeah, like we came across this big ass locust and it turns out it was Rom. And Jace's like, oh yeah, I met Rom when I was a kid. And Marcus and Dom are like, what the hell are you talking about? You've met what? What do you mean? You know, that would just be fun to see. Yeah, they're all sitting around there and they're retelling the stories. And then once they finish, like, telling that portion of it, you have Jace and Barrick are like, yeah, no way in hell are we ever traveling with you guys going underground, ever, period. And Marcus is like, yeah, I never plan on going back there either. Which is kind of like a precursor for what we get in Gears of War 2 and also what we get towards the end of Hollow. So it's funny because it's just like it's setting everything up for what's going to be coming next. And then after they're sitting around like relaxing for a bit, Marcus says, okay, everyone, time for some shut-eye. Tomorrow we're in the home stretch getting back to Jacinto. So then the next page takes us to when they're all awake. They're already in the APC and they're traveling, and they end up getting a distress beacon that's actually in the area of where they are. And they're sitting there just like, okay, this is weird because we got a distress beacon, like, you know, we're still a ways out of Jacinto, and it's on a COG frequency. So this is obviously someone of the COG that's sending out distress. So they actually go over and they go to the area where things are set up. You see a small tent, and within that tent, there's actually sitting a beacon that's sending out the SOS. So they all move up there, and Marcus finds it very odd, where he's like, there's no one around to flag us down. Not only that, but this is inside one of the tents. You know, he's like, this makes sense because it's like, you know, away from enemies to see. But I haven't seen this type of distress beacon used in 15 years. And it's fully charged right now. So that's when everything kind of starts clicking in his head and he sits there. Ah, shit. The moment Marcus realizes what's happening, you have a barrage of bullets coming down from above, not in the air, but like from an above like area. So there were locusts waiting up higher that just shot down. And everyone makes a scramble for it. While they're running, Barrick's like, keep your head down, just go, go. Because none of these 5 have helmets on. So they make a run for it. And immediately after saying that, Gil takes one right to the neck. So right around here, he gets shot. So it takes out a portion of his armor and also digs right into him. And he is down. He is not dead. He is just downed right now, like he is severely wounded. So basically they're sitting there like, oh crap, Gil's down. We got to get him out of here. Pull him out. Safety, safety. So they're able to pull him back and they actually get him to safety. So they're trying to fight off everyone while Jace is there with Gil. And remember, these two have been through quite a bit, like a few years together. Like they know each other well. So we have on the next page, Marcus is like, Jace, try and stop the bleeding. We're going to try and take care of this. You need to try and get him like into safety. Like, do whatever you can. While all of this is going on, you hear the rumbling and the ground comes right on up and out come more locusts, only saying, human. And they're all fighting them off, trying to just hold the line so that they can at least stay alive, take out the locusts, and keep Gil from dying. Following that, we just get action. From here on out, it is just a battle. And I love it because it is just the COG versus Locust, classic just bloodbath. It is great. So I'll try and go through the action best I can. We have it first of where basically they're trying to keep cover and stop any flanks from happening because they are just behind cover. If a flank comes around, they are done. So basically, Jace is trying to play spotter while he's with Gil, and he's trying to get Gil to basically like apply pressure on, because he got shot from this end, so he's using his other arm and telling him, you need to apply pressure, you need to keep holding on. And Gil's like, all right, I got it. So he's trying to get Gil to hold on. While that's going on, he's basically like, Marcus, like, we've got people coming this end, and Marcus is holding off on that end. From the other side of the flank, and Marcus takes out quite a few locusts while he's here. The other side, you see 2 of them blasted away, and with how it looks for the explosion coming out of their back, it looks like Barrick is carrying, it looks like 2 Lancers just like this, I'm assuming, and he just fires them down. So I can't tell what he's firing, but he's handling one of the flanks by himself while Dom and Marcus are on the other end. So it's Barrick solo handling them, and then you have it where Marcus is like, Dom, cover me, I'm going to go in. So basically Marcus is going into the enemy lines at this point. So while Marcus is rushing in, he says that there is a sniper they have to deal with. So there is a sniper all the way up. Now, we see there were multiple shots that were being taken, so it's not like the sniper himself was the one who hit Gil, but it does appear like they are aware that there's a sniper that needs to be handled. And remember, they picked up a lot of ammunition and supplies while they were out. It just so happens that while Marcus is making his way to the enemy lines, Jace, hearing that, is like, I'm on it. He's got a long shot on hand that he pulls out, and he's able to take care of the sniper and take him out while Gil is holding onto his wound, trying to, like, still apply pressure. While this is happening, Barrick makes his way back into cover, and he's checking in to make sure everything is all right with Gil, too. Like, you need to hold on, Gear. Come on. Hold on. You're doing okay. And during all of this, there's an inner monologue that Jace starts to have where he's like, you know, like, I was really under the understanding that, like, it was like Dom's story, and, like, we were doing it. Like, we were having all of this stuff thrown to us, all this insanity, but we were still pulling through. We were winning. We were doing it. But then I remembered the rest of Dom's story. And this is when you hear, boom, and you see an explosion come up of debris right next to Jace, and just like Dom's story of what happened in the first Gears, there are boomers. And the last line you get before to be continued for the next chapter, that meant we had boomers waiting for us at the end. Just like what happened in Dom's story. So not only are they fighting off the locusts, but they now have boomers that have made their way. Gil is bleeding out, and that is the end of the first issue of the Gears of War comics. I think this went over well enough that we can continue this format. I kind of like it. It's a little longer than I wanted, but we also were going in detail on each page. It wasn't just an overview like I did for the Hive Busters. So I want to thank you all for watching. I want to thank everyone for making things possible. Thank the patrons for making things possible. And I will see you guys in the next Gears of War discussion, whether it be characters, areas, or the next issue. I plan on doing every other video is going to be like a discussion of like a character or an area or a theme or something like that. So every other video for the Gear Talk series at least is going to be an issue. So it's going to be, you know, probably a month from now we're going to get issue 2 or something like that. I'll figure it out as we go. Obviously I want to get these out. This is going to go longer than a year, but we're going to make it work. I do enjoy kind of going through this and covering the story like this. So we'll keep it going like this unless something else needs to change. So we're going to end it here. I love you all to death. I'm happy issue 1 went over well. I hope you all enjoy it. I will see you guys in the next video. Later.